live stream. Hi everybody, welcome to Melbourne, Australia. Thanks Alexa, we joined from the back of the room. And yeah, my name is Atula Boguda, I'm the lead organizer of Melbourne Silicon Beach. We are here for ESIC Hub workshop here at Melbourne, Australia. It's a new tax incentive that has been announced by the Australian government to encourage investment in high growth tech startups. So you can learn about how to invest in Australian tech startups and get a tax break, and also for startups to make funding easier. I'll introduce the presenters. Just give me a sec. Hold it. Thanks. You can put it on the table. Okay, first of all, a brief introduction of Melbourne Silicon Beach. We are the organizers of this workshop. Melbourne Silicon Beach is Melbourne's second largest tech startup community. We have about nearly 7,000 members, started about 5 years ago. It is for anyone interested in running a startup or working with a startup, or even professionals like marketing, accounting, any sort of field who wants to work with tech startups. And Silicon Beach meetups happen all around Australia. There's one in Sydney, Adelaide, Perth, Brisbane, Gold Coast, and we recently opened in Geelong, Ballarat, and Launceston as well. So we are spreading right around Australia. So we are committed to starting something that is unique in the world, a connected network of communities, ecosystems, and startup founders, and anyone interested in startups working together as one body. I don't think any country in the world has something like that. So I think it's a really good time to promote Australia globally, especially if Mr. Donald Trump becomes president in America. I think it'd be good for Australian startups. So, and also we need to, before we start, I need to actually acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we stand on, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to elders past and present. And also need to thank General Assembly, who has given this venue to us absolutely free of charge. General Assembly is a startup that launched in New York back in 2012 or something like that. And this is their Melbourne campus. They have two campuses in Australia, in Sydney and Melbourne. And they've given us this facility absolutely free. And yeah, without further ado, I'll throw to the presenters, Stephen and Fraser, who has come down from Sydney. So this will run for slightly under 2 hours, because they need to catch a flight at 9 o'clock from Melbourne to Sydney. It's about 6:15 now, Australian Melbourne time. It's Eastern Daylight Saving Time. So if you have any questions, you can ask them, or else direct them to esichhub.com.au. That's ESICHUB.com.au.
.com.
.com.
Only .com. Yep.
Okay. Okay. It says .com.
It does too. Thank you.
Maybe both are working. She didn't know that. Okay. Stephen and Fraser, if you all can now take over, introduce yourself, and go for it.
Okay.
Thank you.
First of all, thank you for the community and everyone attending, and thanks for hosting us in this lovely environment. Welcome to everyone, wherever they are around the world. My name is Stephen Crow, and this is Fraser Neal. We have established a business as a consequence of the recent changes that have come into place with effect on the 1st of July. And the changes are now up and running, and they are changes which are game changers. What it means for the community is significant change of the way that things have traditionally occurred. So this is a little bit about us. We're ESIC Hub. So our business is all about powering the early stage company to success. We're Australia's first and only online platform dedicated to serving the needs of the early stage community, which we've broken down into 3 segments: the creators, the entrepreneurs, the researchers, the investors, and advisors: legal, accounting, financial planning, financial advisors. They are the 3 parts of the community which are operating at ESIC Hub. We're a lead player in the consultation and the design of the ESIC program. So we have a lot of experience, we are very well qualified in this area, and we're the leading industry player around serving the needs of the early stage community and helping them with what they need to do to achieve their goals. So as you'll see here, we have a magnet attracting the capital. That's the ESIC. The ESIC is the magnet. What is an ESIC? It's that concept that is defined under Australia's income tax laws, and it means early stage innovation company, as that concept has been created under the tax legislation by the federal government with bipartisan support that commenced on the 1st of July. The legislation came into place 2 days before we received royal assent, 2 days before the election was called, and the noise has been somewhat muffled. This is a great story for Australia and a great story for everyone involved in trying to create a difference and some growth opportunities. So what's an ESIC mean for you? Hopefully the light's going to go on. It'll mean that you're immediately attractive to investors, and I'll explain why. It will empower you in your negotiations with investors, and it will give you some control back over your capital raising process. Just at this stage, can I get a general idea of what the population's generally made up of here tonight? Are people looking for capital generally, or looking for investments, or a bit of each? Accountants, advisors? Capital needs?
Yep.
Accountant? Capital? Investor? Capital?
Yep.
Lawyer? Okay, that's great. So I think what all this means, because you've attended, is obviously there's a subject matter here relevant for you all, that you're all interested in understanding. This evening, you'll have a lot of ammunition into what it means for each and every one of you. If not, as Athula has said, we're available, happy to chat through the Q&A, and also always online, or happy for you to receive your phone calls around any inquiries you've got. So in essence, the ESIC program is about a new investment framework. That's the take-home message. The world has changed. The concept of investing being a position that I guess people were dragged along towards is changing. What we're going to find is that a lot more early stage companies are getting a lot more authority and a lot more empowerment in their negotiations with investors. When is ESIC relevant? Being an ESIC is relevant under the legislation what's called the testing time. The testing time is when new equity is issued and paid for. So as you'll understand, ESIC is not a static status. It's dynamic. You can be an ESIC today and not an ESIC tomorrow. Timing is critical in this ESIC investment world. The reason it's particularly important is because the timing dictates when and if the tax benefits associated with being an ESIC are derived and delivered to the investors. We'll talk about those investment benefits in a minute. To be an ESIC, we have a number of tests that need to be qualified. The first one is you need to meet the early stage test for companies. The early stage test, under the law, has the concept of typically you're an Australian private company that's been incorporated in the last few years. You're reasonably fresh. That's not to say that overseas companies are not included, and that's not to say that older companies are not included. But as a general starting point, if you're incorporated in Australia, or you're entered in Australia's ABR within the last 3 income years, or you're 6 years old, we then have another test to look at your group expenses across the 3-year program. But in essence, we're talking about a reasonably fresh Australian company. Overseas companies are also eligible in certain circumstances. Let's move through. In the income year, to be an ESIC, you need to be reasonably freshly incorporated. And in the income year preceding your testing time, in other words, when you want capital, we're now, for most people, in the June 2017 income year. So in the June 16 income year, to be eligible, you need to have had an income of not more than tax assessable income. I thought you would be familiar with that concept. That's gross income of no more than $200,000 and gross expenses of no more than $1 million.
Most startups will be earning losses, so that's not a problem.
That's not a problem at all.
Okay.
And recently incorporated companies, incorporated after 30 June 2016, are not a problem too. Okay. You'll get the take-home message here that ESIC testing is very important, and planning is important because timing is everything. So let's recap. To be an early stage, to meet the early stage test, you've got to be a reasonably fresh Australian company. You've got to have had income of less than $200,000 and expenses of less than $1 million in the year prior to when you want to raise ESIC capital.
Is that revenue or income?
It's tax assessable income.
Okay, so it's not. It's like profit or revenue? Is it
Revenue.
Sales?
Gross income.
Okay.
Yeah. If you have a government grant, for example, that is included in your income, but for ESIC purposes, that is backed out. So if you're a startup that is over $200,000, merely because you received a government grant for R&D or for commercialisation, that is reduced, so that should not disqualify you. I guess another take-home message is, with our experience in this area, please do not disqualify yourself. If you have any queries, we've got an online functionality which we'll take you through during the course of, during the course of the presentation. Please do not disqualify yourself. It would be quite an unfortunate consequence to think that you have disqualified yourself when your circumstances may be that you're actually quite eligible. So to recap, we've got a reasonably fresh Australian company, we've got an income level, we've got an expense level. The other concept is that the company is not a publicly listed company. So, if you meet that early stage test, we then pass through to the next gateway, which needs to be met. And that is either the 100-point innovation test or the principles-based test. Either one of these two is fine. So to recap, we have the early stage test. If you pass through that gateway, we then need to assess each company in terms of whether it's eligible under the 100-point innovation test or the principles-based test. The 100-point innovation test basically says that under the tax law, points are allocated for various factors. If you meet 100 points, in terms of the points allocated to those circumstances, you are an ESIC because you meet the early stage test and you meet the 100-point innovation test. We'll come back to what being an ESIC really means. But a 100-point innovation test is there. If you're not eligible under the 100-point innovation test, there is another avenue. But let's talk briefly about the 100-point innovation test. It is a prescriptive test. It's empirical. It's based on your circumstances. So for example, if you have an R&D tax claim in the previous income year, the June 16 income year, you will get X number of points contributed towards your 100-point profile. If you have a patent, you will get a number of other points attributed towards your 100 points. If it's an innovation patent, you will get points, but not as much as if it was a standard patent. So the concept of patent is important. It's not critical, and you only need to meet a number of these factors. You don't need to meet all of them. If you don't meet enough and you get to the 100 points, you're through the gateway and we're working with you. You're on the ESIC program.
Does a patent application count, or is
It needs to be granted. Okay. And a patent doesn't necessarily need to be owned. You can be a licensee of a patent. A licensee of a patent will give you points provided it's structured the right way. So, in principle, we are talking about empirical data that illustrates a history of investment in IP creation, an R&D tax claim, a patent, possibly contributing to an accelerated program under the government's entrepreneurs program. That gives you points. If you have an agreement with a university or a research institution, you will get points if they're working with you to co-develop your project. There's about 8 factors. All of them get assessed in terms of your ESIC eligibility under the 100-point innovation test.
If you get 50 points for an investor investing $50,000, if you have 2 investors investing $50,000, does that get the 100 points, or is it just counted once?
And that investor needs to be a certain type of investor.
Unsophisticated, yeah.
Not necessarily non-sophisticated, unaffiliated.
Yeah.
So it cannot be family, it cannot be blood relations, it can't be an associate or an affiliate as that concept's known under the Tax Act.
So if my wife's an industrial engineer and I want to fund a startup with her, then how is that possible? Or is it not possible because I'm affiliated?
Can we come back to that?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, if you can make a note of that, we'll go through that in the Q&A. 100-point innovation test is pretty much done, all right? Let's move through to the principles-based test. I call this the subjective test. This is all about a criteria.
Is there just a clear set out online of a 100-point test, or you can get a handout?
Yeah.
Well, what we will do, that's a good question. If you've got a brochure, we've built for the community, free of charge, an item called the ESIC predictor. You can go onto the ESIC predictor, do a Google search, or go onto our website under early stage company. So www.esicHub.com, and you can go on there free of charge and self-assess your ESIC status. And in there, we've built our own software which intuitively picks up your answers. And to answer your question specifically, you will go through that and it will answer you a series of questions. Take you 5-8 minutes to do, and you will know at the end of that whether you're eligible under the 100-point innovation test or not eligible under the principles-based test. So we can assess that.
Either right assessment of the principles-based and 100 points test.
Exactly. The ESIC predictor does all your prediction for you.
Yeah, great.
And it'll drop out for you an ESIC status, a self-assessment ESIC status.
Yeah.
So you invest 5 or 8 minutes, maybe 10, and it will basically drop for you. You'll either be ESIC ready, ESIC in progress, or not ESIC. Each of those 3 things mean different things, which I'll come to. But to answer your question, I would suggest that you all go to ESIC predictor and fill out your circumstances if you're interested. Under the principles-based test, each and every one of these tests needs to be met. So you need to have a company genuinely focused on developing for commercialisation 1 or more new or significantly improved products, processes, services, or marketing or organisational methods. If you have that, we then assess the next step, which is, does your business relating to those products, processes, services, or methods have a high growth potential? If you meet that, we move through to the next step. Can the company demonstrate it has the potential to be able to successfully scale that business? And if you meet that, we go through to the 4th test. Can the company demonstrate it has the potential to be able to address a broader than local market, including global markets, through that process and that business? Now, obviously, the US election is going to throw up some interesting consequences. Scale point number 4 is all about an ability to take your business and make it global. In an ideal world, that's what we're hoping to achieve through the high growth businesses. Step 5, having met 1 to 4, step 5 then is all about, can the company demonstrate it's got the potential to be able to have competitive advantages for that business? We need to meet each and every one of those tests for an ESIC under the principles-based test to qualify. You'll get a very strong feel for that there is quite an economic and global assessment required for that type of work. I would think that for those startups and people needing capital, the relevant consideration, and there's obviously a relevant consideration for investors, is, am I an ESIC? I'd like you to find out, either now or in your own time. That's our online free predictor. It's called the ESIC predictor. You can go and fill that out and you'll get a feel for what your ESIC status is. Why is that important? You'll get 1 of 3 results, which are going to help you in your negotiations and to start you in your information program around what this means. ESIC ready, that's the best outcome. What that means is that you are ready to engage with investors. But bear in mind that the ESIC status and the ESIC qualification is all at the time the shares are issued. So what we've built is ESIC predictor just to help you get a feel for what your ESIC status is. ESIC ready means that when you walk into our room as a sophisticated investor and talk with us, for example, that one of our first questions is going to be, what's your ESIC status? If you're ESIC ready, what that means is that you're ready for capital. You're actually ready to negotiate. You're not being held up. ESIC in progress means that you are on the ESIC program, but you are not quite ESIC ready. That probably means that there's a couple of things that need tweaking in your circumstances that just need cleaning up to get you ESIC ready and then ready to engage with investors. The third one is not ESIC. Now that can be a whole raft of situations. We might open you up on the surgery table and close you back up because we can't help you and send you home. Not ESIC does not mean that you could not be eligible. Circumstances very much depend upon the situation. And I can't, obviously during Q&A we can talk about some of that, but it's impossible for me to be able to say categorically that if you come up and not ESIC status, that you won't be ESIC. It's not possible to say that. But what it does say is that you may be an ESIC or you may not be. Put this on there on the investor benefits. What should I talk about? Okay. So for an investor, if you're an investor into coming into this ESIC world, what's it mean? And why do you guys need to know about it? Well, it looks like this. The program applies for sophisticated and non-sophisticated investors. So the pool is very large. The pool applies to Australian investors, resident, from a tax point of view, and non-resident. So
what do you mean by sophisticated investors?
So, a sophisticated investor is a concept that's known as the Corporations Act, Corporations Law. And typically, it looks something like net assets or gross assets above $2.5 million investable, and an income level or an income level above $250,000 per annum for the last 2 years. But that's something that you would rely on your accountant, and we would rely on your accountant to tell us about. But a sophisticated investor doesn't mean a smart investor. Can be a sophisticated investor and not be a smart investor too. So it's a concept that's known under the Corporations Law. Non-sophisticated investors are also eligible under this program. And to recap, resident investors and non-resident investors. Every conceivable investment entity other than a publicly listed or a public company is an eligible investment vehicle. So super funds, trusts, individuals, companies, probably not the preferred, but eligible. As long as they're not public companies and listed or widely held public companies, they are all eligible investment entities. So,
A public company can be an ESIC company?
no. As I mentioned before, you may not have been here.
Yeah.
One of the ESIC eligibility criteria is that you are an unlisted company.
No, but a public company can be unlisted. The difference is, the question is, does it have to be a PTY?
Yes, it does. But if you're talking about a public unlisted company,
Yeah.
it would depend on what your shareholding looks like.
Fair.
Does that
So
disqualify
if he just
other
asked if it
investors?
had to be a P2 LTD and you said yes.
It has to be a PTY, that's right.
But then you said it can be a trust fund, it can be...
No, can it be a public unlisted?
Sorry,
Oh, the investor. Okay.
could we maybe hold the Q&As until a little bit later, until we finish it? And I can clarify for you, you need to be an Australian incorporated private company, typically. Overseas companies are also eligible, but you cannot have your shares listed on any stock exchange in Australia or globally to qualify as an ESIC. Does that clarify your question?
Actually, no, sorry about that, because the question was, can you be a public unlisted company?
Yes, you can. Yep. To be an ESIC,
Yes.
yes, you can.
You mentioned something about not being widely held
Mhm.
if you are a public unlisted company.
We're getting confused. We're talking about an ESIC
Yes.
as opposed to an investor.
Correct.
Okay. The ESIC cannot be listed.
Fair enough. Yeah.
The investor
Yeah.
cannot be a publicly listed company.
No, I'm talking about the company which needs to qualify as an EC company.
Yes, it cannot be listed, but it can be a public unlisted company.
Fair enough.
Okay, so the investor benefits are in the nature of a tax rebate, non-refundable, and CGT benefits. So what does that look like? For an investor, either sophisticated or non-sophisticated, in an ESIC, a 20% non-refundable tax rebate attaches to your investment. So if you're a non-sophisticated investor and you invest $50,000 in an ESIC in the appropriate manner, you will get back a tax rebate through your tax statement of $10,000. If you're a sophisticated investor, that 20% rule still applies, but there are some differences. For a sophisticated investor, they are capped in relation to their rebatable benefit at $200,000 per annum on a grouped basis. So what that means is that a sophisticated investor can invest the first $1 million in ESICs or a pool of ESICs or one ESIC and receive the $200,000 tax rebate. It's non-refundable, but can be carried forward indefinitely. So to recap, what's it look like? On the rebate level, a sophisticated investor can invest up to the first $1 million and get $200,000 rebate back through the government's tax program. And a non-sophisticated investor can invest up to $50,000 and get back a $10,000 tax credit through their tax return. A non-sophisticated investor has no limitation in terms of how much they can invest in the next program, and that is the capital gains tax benefits. If you are an eligible investor in an eligible ESIC and you make a profit on the disposal of those shares between years 1 and 10, all profit is free of capital gains tax. It's massive. Non-sophisticated investors are limited to $50,000 a year in terms of an investment. The program, the architecture, has been designed to protect retail investors from salesmen who don't really have their interests at heart. So it's been a well-designed program. If they invest $1 more, they lose all the benefits. If you're a sophisticated investor, you have no cap in relation to how much investment you make. So you can invest $10 million in ESICs. The first million qualifies for the $200,000 tax rebate, and the balance, all of it, is eligible for the CGT benefits if they happen to make a gain, which obviously we all hope they do. So the tax benefits in summary: 20% tax rebate, non-refundable, and a CGT profile that's very attractive in relation to any gains made between years 1 and 10. There'll be no CGT payable. That is what you guys as startups or investors need to understand when you're walking into a room with investors. The government has given you a up to 0 to 20% on the sale benefit. And at ESIC Hub, we're helping startups negotiate that program. This is a serious game changer for startups. The world's changed. And I would suggest that it's very important, you've obviously turned up, it's very important that you consider what the implications are as an investor and as a startup, because the benefits are enormous. So at ESIC Hub, what we're doing is connecting the ideas with the capital. So we've got serious investors and serious startups, and we're advising and flowing the capital through this program. We're validating, we're providing an independent marketplace, we're independently owned, we have no biases, we are intending to provide the marketplace where the early stage community operates with confidence. We're validating the ESIC investments, we're doing the due diligence on the ESICs so that investors that are coming in are fully aware that we're standing behind it, we've done our due diligence and we've qualified those and we've discarded those that aren't. So we are validating ESICs. Then we're facilitating the investment process. We also have investors associated with us, serious investors. So we're providing an end-to-end solution for startups to work out whether they're an ESIC. You can do that using ESIC Predictor as a start. We're providing the capital and we're providing the framework to ensure that the investors are getting the tax benefits and the startups are getting their capital. The way that we're doing that is by ensuring that all of our program is compliant with the tax legislation and all the regulatory framework that goes around that. So in summary, we have a new world, and it's a new world that's really encouraging. And so I would encourage you all to think about what it means for you. We're more than happy to engage with you. We have an office in Melbourne, we're in Sydney. We're more than happy to engage with you guys around any questions you have and any specific circumstances. We keep everything confidential. We're bound to that. So I can assure you that even though you're sitting beside people tonight, everyone's circumstances will be treated confidentially. So, having said that, I guess now we find that the Q&A is probably the best way to start. Hello.
Can you invest as a vehicle that's an investment fund with other investors pulled into it?
It depends what the investment fund is. However, if your question is about do these benefits flow through entities, the answer is yes.
But you can set up a VC fund that invests less than $1 million a year and take. Does it matter who your investor base is, but you can basically set up a qualifying vehicle?
We're doing it once a week.
And the only thing that you can't have is a public company investing in that vehicle?
You can have a public company investing in your vehicle. However, that public company will not get the ESIC benefits.
Okay.
So you can have disqualifying investors,
Yep.
but that does not disqualify you or the other investors.
And say you invest $1 million, in that year you get $200K in your tax refund if you invest in qualifying.
If you're a sophisticated investor.
So the fund can't claim that itself?
No, it flows through the fund. Okay. Depends what fund structure you're talking about. Typically they'd be a unit trust or a discretionary trust. They'll flow through the investors.
Okay.
And there's a reporting obligation around that. Again, we at ESIC are doing all that. So the tax office wants to know who the investors are, clearly, because they want to make sure there's no rorting of the program going on. you know, the natural thing would be to think that, you know, you could set up 5 funds and have 5 investors through different funds, all contributing $1 million each.
Yeah.
You know, that's not the way it works. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of integrity measures in there,
Yeah.
but the program is such that, yeah, there's reporting obligations just to make sure the government program runs the way they want it.
So he said refund, but it's actually rebatable.
It's rebate.
Not refund.
Rebate.
Yeah.
So it's a rebate.
Okay.
So what would happen in that situation, as that gentleman's correctly picked up, if you had tax liability, this rebate would be offset against that to ultimately reduce your tax liability. If you have insufficient Australian tax obligations, so non-residents are still eligible, from an NPV point of view or a net present value point of view, they would probably only value the rebate in terms of their other Australian tax income that might be accessible.
Yeah,
So-
sorry, I have a question here because I've got 58 people on the live stream and they'll be most probably outside of Australia. So can you talk about non-resident investors, like people who are not citizens of Australia, whether they can invest in ESIC?
Sure, John, come a bit closer.
No, they can hear, that's fine.
So non-resident citizens doesn't necessarily mean resident from a tax point of view.
Yeah.
So there's a very important distinction here. Residency in the tax law, like in global countries, most of them, have a concept of residency versus non-residency. We are not talking here about citizenship.
Yeah.
I'm talking about residency.
Yeah.
So Australian tax residents can be people who live globally, all around the world, but they're still Australian tax residents. So equally, you can have people living in Australia who are citizens, possibly, but aren't Australian tax residents. Okay. So there's an important distinction here. Either way, whether you're a resident or a non-resident, this benefit ends up in your tax account. It will only be of benefit immediately to those residents who have other Australian tax payable or non-residents who have other Australian tax payable in relation to the rebate. In relation to the capital gains tax benefit, again I say it's only applicable if you're investing in an ESIC, and you need to make sure that you're investing in an ESIC. Okay, that's the key criteria at the time the shares are issued, and we're managing that process for companies. If you're investing in an ESIC and you're a resident or a non-resident, the CGT benefits also apply.
Thanks, sounds good.
Yeah.
Especially for Australians living overseas, might
Absolutely.
be interested. Yep.
Yeah, a lot of Australians are living in Hong Kong,
Yeah.
which obviously has its own tax benefits, but you know, there's other Australians residents, high executives, Australian residents living globally.
Yeah.
They are certainly able to use this program legitimately.
There's a lot of startup founders who went because the conditions were not right here. They're now living in San Francisco or Silicon Valley. They want to give back to the community. So this is a
Absolutely,
good
we
way
have
to-
a number of our clients who are in that situation. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
it's good to know.
It's a good program. So the take-home message for people globally is that Australia is well and truly worth looking at.
Yep.
And check out esichhub.com if they want some information.
Thanks.
What are the implications for follow-on investments? So if an investor comes in early stage and then wants to carry on at a later stage, is that okay? Is there any?
There's no preclusion. There's no preclusion, but it doesn't also mean that you qualify. As I mentioned on the slide, the relevant consideration at that time, whether you do a seed, a Series 8, whatever it is, I don't really worry too much about the labels. The key consideration is, are you an ESIC at the time that you're raising capital? So you can raise capital 3 or 4 times in one income year, and you can get the ESIC benefits for your shareholders and for yourself those 3 or 4 times a year. So it actually doesn't matter. If you've been an ESIC once, you can be an ESIC more than once. If you've never been an ESIC, you could become an ESIC. So it's a very, as I mentioned on the slide, timing's everything, and it's a dynamic status.
But your previous investors won't get the benefit retroactively.
Why?
No, I'm asking that.
No, they would. If they're ESIC investors at the time that they invested, they would get the
So,
benefit.
for example, if my company became ESIC approved today, but I already raised capital, but the investors from the previous round, they won't.
That's correct.
They won't get that.
As I said, the important thing is when the shares are issued. Yeah. Sorry, you had a question?
Yeah, so you talked about the how old the company is or how young the company is in order to be eligible.
Yeah.
I've basically used the same entity since 2001. and we basically just traded as a different name as Solar Farm Business and just kept running that entity.
Yeah.
How does that affect me? Because we are a new startup, but the entity in essence is old.
Yes, I understand. So we're working with the government around some legals, and that I'm not sure that we'll probably end up going back that far. I'm not sure. We are aware of quite a few circumstances that are hard luck stories. Might I suggest to you that we have a discussion around how to solve that? There are avenues to solve that.
Well, the thing I'm thinking about is if I go for investment, though, I've been told that I should start up a membership because people don't want my luggage.
Well, there's a lot of commercial reasons why that would make sense.
Yes. But then I'm thinking, though, how does that affect me? Because I've got a new shelf company, in essence, which I'm moving everything into, but I don't really have all the benefits of all the R&D that came with the previous entity for qualifying purposes.
There may be other ways that you can qualify.
Yeah.
There may be other ways.
Prohibitions in flipping it from one company to another?
Well, there's certainly anti-avoidance rules. I mean, Australia has a very healthy anti-avoidance tax program, which I'm sure some people in this room are aware of more than others, and we're certainly not in the business of promoting that sort of stuff. However, there are legitimate commercial reasons why some stuff happens. Okay, so I couldn't categorically say every flip works, because it doesn't. Some of it will be very blatant. Some of it will make sense. Some of it will make sense. So,
for that example, is here a reason why you might do it?
well, we're working with a company at the moment, for example. You know, it's a typical story, you know. Friends, families and fools have all kicked in $2 or $3 million. It's a good business. It's about to go global. Investors don't want to come into debt-pregnant companies, and you can understand it. I mean, the $2 or $3 million it's raised, effectively they're giving it to the debt funders of the business. So there are legitimate ways that reorganisations can occur, but I'm certainly not advocating that you reorganise your affairs only for ESIC. But clearly, there are major capital advantages in ESIC. And this is the best investment program going around. So with the legal brains in the room, you know, there are issues and responsibilities around making sure that you look at your best capital structures. You've got a responsibility to do that.
I just want to be clear, so sole traders aren't included?
You need to be a company.
You need to be a company, so...
And not a trustee.
Not a trustee, so I'd have to change that into...
Again, you know, you might be able to change your circumstances.
Yeah.
If I was your advisor,
Yeah.
I'd be wanting to know about your industry, because sole practitioners can typically have a high risk profile. Companies can offer veils of security and risk management techniques that may not be available to sole practitioners. So it would depend on what sort of industry you're in and whether it made sense. And do you need capital? I mean, that's one of the fundamental questions too.
Yeah, maybe I'll research the group probably.
Yeah, okay. Well, you feel free to drop us an email and we can have we're down in Melbourne regularly, so I'm happy to catch up, pick up a call. Sorry, there's just a gentleman behind me. Yeah.
Just a couple of questions. So which is the responsible regulating authority, and what's the registration process in terms of certification, and what's the lag between application generally and
Philly, three pretty big questions.
Not necessarily.
Okay. The first question, I'll come back to the registration program. Okay. So in relation to the eligibility criteria, this is within Australia's tax law. So the Australian Tax Office is responsible for that. In relation to how long does the registration take, there is no such thing. And in relation to...
Can we just clarify that there is no such thing? So what happens? How is
what do you want to clarify? There's no such thing as a registration program.
Okay.
It's not like R&D.
So what is the status of a SEC under the ATO jurisdiction once it's assessed?
So do you self-declare or who says that you're an EC company?
Okay. So these two questions are really about a bigger question. How does the tax law impact this sort of program? That's really what the questions are about.
Also, how do you prove to investors that you are certified? If I'm using the wrong language,
that's okay. Yeah, that's all right. Yeah, that's okay. But I mean, the architecture of your question is about, you know, how do you get comfort around this stuff? So the comfort is, so the scheme is administered through the Tax Act. So therefore, ultimately the tax office is responsible for this.
Yeah.
Do you understand that?
Yeah, I'm a lawyer, so I understand that.
Okay, good. So, in relation to the proving of that, we have a self-assessment system in Australia. You may well know that if you're familiar with this program. So the responsibility is on you as a self-assessment program to prove it. So that's one alternative. It's not an alternative we'd recommend, and we'd not recommend that for lots of reasons. So to answer your question, we would recommend that an appropriately skilled and expert tax person provides investors with this advice. If you want to do it yourself, good luck.
Just a word of confirmation for you, or is it more elaborate than that?
Confirmation
Yeah,
from the tax office.
You would provide the advice.
No, I didn't. I said. I mean, certainly we would happily provide.
Yeah.
I mean, we're licensed to do that.
But so if I came to you for that advice,
Yep.
would you simply give me a confirmation that yes, you've met all the requirements?
Or a certificate of some sort.
So what we would do, assume, are you putting the hat on as an investor or as an ESIC when you say that?
As an advisor.
Okay, all right. Okay, well let's deal with that. Let's deal with what an advisor, what we do for an advisor. It's probably the best way to actually explain it, because there's the two parts of the population. Let's assume Fraser's a startup and Athula is your client as the investor. Okay? Fraser's a startup and needs capital. We work with Fraser and go and do all the due diligence on Fraser's company. We work out whether or not he's an ESIC. Okay? Using all of our experience and all the stuff that we do. We then say to Fraser, we think you're ESIC ready now, Fraser. We can go and engage with investors. Now, Athula is one of our investors and you're his advisor. At that stage, because the tax benefits flow to the investor, we'll forget about fiduciary responsibilities and all that stuff for the moment. Fraser's the startup needing the capital, or the early stage company. Athula is the investor needing the benefit. So what we do is provide Athula the qualified tax opinion and certificate that he gives them to you as your tax agent, as his tax agent, that you then put into your tax return. So at the time that Athula makes the investment, we're on the line for our professional responsibility to demystify this for Athula and de-risk it. It's our professional opinion that's provided to Athula as the investor, and we engage with him around that concept, and he gives that certificate to you that you then put into the tax return, which is the delivery mechanism for the credit or the rebate to flow through.
Okay. So we wouldn't put it into the tax return. I mean, we assume that it's. We assume it when we prepare the tax return.
That's right. You would rely upon our certificate.
Yeah. Now, does the same go for the sophisticated investor thing?
Same thing.
Yeah.
We don't qualify sophisticated investors.
No, but
we qualify the investment in the ESIC.
yes, yes.
So we rely.
So a sophisticated investor now is one determined as prescribed by an accountant who's got more than $2 million or whatever the income
Yes.
thing is, and that still is a requirement.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's the only validation that needs to happen
For a sophisticated investor? Yes. Yep. Yep. That's the only additional layer for them.
Stephen, you're taking a bit of risk there.
Sorry, yeah.
Really ties into my question, which is,
oh, sorry.
who pays you? Where are you making money?
Okay, so not enough. So we're a professional services model. So we are, what's the best way? We are providing a service to the 3 community members here, as an example. We're not doing anything with the advisor except making their life very simple. We are giving a service to the investor, but we're really doing the due diligence on the startup. So we are appointed by the startup, and part of our appointment is to basically give our service and our skill and the results of our due diligence to the investor. So we're appointed by the startup. Yep.
So that due diligence just concerns the ESIC requirements.
Yes.
And you'd get a disclaimer sitting in there saying it's an ESIC company, but we know nothing about the underlying economics of the.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. Some of our clients do retain us. So stage 1 is, are you ESIC? That's the first filter, really, in our investment world. Some clients do retain us to say, Stephen, can you also please find us investment grade products? And that's the next filter. But the first filter that we're talking about today, really, is the ESIC filter.
Stephen, do you provide that service per investor and revalidate and re-audit? Or once you do that for your startup client seeking funding, that then is available to each of the investors through you?
Thank you for the question. We provide that to each and every investor that goes into Fraser's startup. So what we've built is a very efficient model. The alternative is that the 10 investors in the startup go in and take Fraser's time and effort to go and do their due diligence. We don't do that. We get appointed by Fraser, he deals with us. The investors rely on us. So it's a much more efficient system.
investor.
But we provide each investor with the requisite opinion, provided it's substantiated.
Just that flight got cancelled. That flight got cancelled.
Oh really?
So
Has anyone got a spare bed tonight?
we're just on the one before the 8:30.
Okay, so thanks for that.
That's okay. I think. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I haven't Stephen. No, I'm his number.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Did that answer?
It does, and probably the next layer is, are you charging the investors for that service, or is that, again, as you say, just to reconfirm on behalf of the one client and multiple investors, the revenue comes from that company, not the investors?
It's a good question. The problem we have is the startups can see this benefit for their capital raising. But the problem is the benefits to the investor, fundamentally. So economically, to answer your question, what we do is we engage with the early stage company, but our fee model is such that it's paid by the investor. And that makes sense, because they're the ones getting the benefit.
So are you acting for the investor?
No, we're acting for the startup.
Acting for the startup, providing advice to the investor?
Well, we're providing the tax opinion to the investor under the guidance of the company. Yeah. Because, I mean, clearly when you look at this, we're giving, I've seen your hand, yeah, I'll be right with you. The early stage innovation company that's where the due diligence is required. Yeah. That's, it's the only way that the model really practically works.
Yeah, a lot of early stage startups don't have much money, so it's sensible for you to get the money from investors.
Well, the investors in the end are the ones getting the benefit.
Yeah.
So, does that answer your question?
Yeah. The follow-up question is it a percentage of the investment? How do you break that charge down for the investors? I'm an investor in a range of companies, so I'm interested to know that structure as well.
Yeah, it's okay. There's no one size fits all.
No, that's okay.
It very much depends on the scope of work required and the risk profile of the work that we're doing. No different than any other concept, but I can assure you that the fees are not prohibitive. I mean, we've got a business that's up and going, it's going well, got a lot of clients. I mean, we are not here to retire tomorrow. We're in this for the long game, and we think we're adding a very good value to the marketplace. I don't know. I hope we are, and we'd like to think that we're not doing that in an uneconomic way for anyone.
So how would you get paid if the investment wasn't achievable?
Well, hopefully we have good investors. No, that's right. I mean, that's part of the risk that we carry. Every case is different. Right? We have large clients who have us on retainers, and we work on that basis. We have, as Athula mentioned, a lot of early stage companies that can't afford stuff. As I said, I'm not trying to evade that question. It's actually impossible to answer it because we have the whole range of opportunities and variations. Yeah. You guys will have that as clients come into the door, in your own businesses. Yeah.
You recommend that new companies get the certification or before, or is it always at the time of investment? So if I'm a company seeking capital, we're not raising just yet, is there any point in going through the process?
Absolutely.
Prior?
So the question is about, when should you really start thinking about ESIC?
But then we wouldn't engage you because you're paid by the investor. So if we don't have investors yet, then is there a self-certification process, or is there a standard form application through the ATO that we can do?
Okay. I would suggest that you go to the ESIC predictor and make your own views about that. If you want to rely upon your own advice, certainly go to the tax office, maybe even request a private ruling with the tax office. If you feel like you can frame the questions appropriately, if you feel like you're a tax expert and know the right questions to answer and ask, I would highly recommend you go to the tax office.
Yeah, sure.
But if you're in a hurry, and if you, I guess, appreciate that this is a complex world, I would suggest that you get some help. In terms of when you get the help, I'd be getting it earlier rather than later, because you really have nothing to lose.
Oh, but you were saying that you guys don't charge that first stage, right?
For what
Which is
first
the
stage?
eligibility stage to basically figure out whether you're an ESIC or not.
So we've got a free online tool.
Yes, yes.
Okay, it'll take you 5 or 10 minutes. ESIC predictor.
Yeah.
You can go and get a feel for that. It's your own. It's a self-assessment tool. We take no responsibility. It's all based upon the answers that you provide.
But thereafter, if we had X amount of questions with you guys, would there be a fee for that, given that we're not at investment ready potentially stage?
What we're doing with our clients is we're engaging with them now.
Yes.
We're engaging with them on a 12-month program, okay? Because they see the benefit in getting prepared and planned.
Yes.
Some need incorporation. Some need restructuring. Some just need to be taken down the patent path because it's nearly ready. There's no impediment. We don't have the hourglass going. We don't send bills every week. But we have a program where we start and you come down the path with us. Okay. Ultimately,
is it something like a retainer type system that helps you along the path?
right, there'll be a small retainer for in some circumstances, not everyone, but there'll be a small retainer for some, and we'll come down the path. And ultimately, we want to get you some capital, and we've got investors to do it too. If you don't have them, if you have investors, we work with advisors. They'll come to us and refer clients to us and say, "Can you help us get this program over the line?"
Thanks.
Your website mentions that a founder can actually be an investor.
Yeah.
So if you've got 2 founders, that means they can put in 30% each and therefore get 60% benefit?
Thank you for the question.
Is it only a maximum of 30% per ESIC?
Okay. So the question often comes up, actually. It's in relation to what's a founder's ESIC status look like. A founder can be an ESIC investor. They can be eligible. But they can't own, no ESIC investor can own more than 30% of the ESIC to qualify for the ESIC benefits. So if you and your wife own the company jointly, neither of you will be an ESIC investor because you both own collectively 100% of the business.
But what if we don't? What if I own 30%, she has 30%, another person owns...
So there's a 40%. So the question is, if a husband and wife own 30% each, and there's a 40% minority shareholder, would those husband and wife group be an ESIC investor? The answer is unfortunately no, because you would be considered to be affiliates and associates under the Tax Act.
What if that third party was just another investor who was happy?
No, I was talking about you. Sorry, I thought the question was about you and your wife, whether you and your wife would be ESIC investors.
But the other investor could be.
Right, if I'm a founder and investing 30%, I invest 50 grand, I take 30%, she does the same thing, and then we've got 40% left over, which wouldn't qualify under ESIC because the maximum is 30% per investor.
That's right.
We get someone else to invest their money for 40%, they get no benefits.
That's right.
My wife and I still get...
You guys are related, so therefore you're not eligible under ESIC.
So can I clarify that point? We have a company here with a 30%, with a husband owning 30%, a wife owning 30%, and a third party owning 40%. I need to clarify this because I think there might be some miscommunication going around. No one of those 3 investors would be an ESIC investor. And the reason is because whilst you own 30%, you would be grouped with your wife, as the gentleman said. So therefore, you actually own more than 30%. But the 40% investor owns more than 30%.
Yeah, so you just take her out though. I'm eligible.
I've heard a lot of husbands want to do that. There are ways. Yeah, I mean, the take-home message is it's traced through, so no family entity really can own more than 30% if they want the ESIC benefits. But we have situations like this. Founders own 70% of the business, they get a minority shareholder in for 30%. They realise that they don't get the tax benefits on that 70%, but they're happy to get the capital from the 30% because it's going to give their business the growth avenue that they need.
If you take on more than, or to your ownership being less than 30%, then can you qualify? So you own 100%, you move to 29% after taking on investment. Can you qualify yourself then?
For what portion?
For your 29%?
No. ESIC is tested at the time the shares are issued.
So when you, okay, so your shares,
If you
so
do
the question,
could you next 20%?
Yes. Yes, it could be. Provided it's an ESIC and done appropriately.
Okay.
We've got a situation similar to that. Probably not dissimilar to some circumstances here. Company, 4 founders, all own 25%. That's that's fine. This was before ESIC, by the way. But they potentially would all be ESIC investors because they own less than 30% and no one, they're not blood related, and it's normal to have a business partnership like that. One of the shareholders went a bit feral and the things were put in place, so there's now only 3 shareholders, but they all own a third, clearly. So that doesn't preclude the first portion being ESIC, but once you trip above 30%, in that circumstance, they would have a problem if it was an ESIC.
So did you just say that the 3% isn't eligible in the 30% years, or
In that example,
Yes.
because of the change. So the first 25 is preserved.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because there was history there.
That's right. But it's not an ESIC, so it's a bad case study because it was done prior to 30 June or 1st of July. But if it was done now, that circumstance would be the first 25 would be okay. Potentially the next 5 would be okay, depending on how that buyout occurred. But the remaining 3 1/3 wouldn't be. And it's quite possible to have a shareholder that's split between an ESIC qualifying and non-ESIC qualifying. You can have both.
Do you have a view on, it's a bit of a crystal ball question, but when Turnbull's come under pressure, if we look at what they've done with the R&D tax concession, sort of anti-startups and just go back to big business. I used to be on the tax concession board, so I sort of went the other way, sort of go that way. Crystal ball question, I mean, is this going to get the kibosh in 12, 24 months, or is there pretty broad support for it?
It has bipartisan support. So the Labor Party, so just to give a very brief overview, so I've only got 5 minutes left, sorry guys. It's very difficult, as you say, it's crystal ball. It has bipartisan support. We would expect it to continue. There is no lifeline on it under the legislation, but politics being what it is, we've seen that today, who knows what the future holds. But I would say that we have a new foundation, and I think this is the dawn, this is my personal view, I think this is the dawn of a new asset class. And I'm hoping it is for Australia.
I think it would be a very brave government to change this, because this could be the next negative gearing for startups, I think, because it's, it can...
Well, the government's taking a view that this is going to be the next generator of jobs and growth. I mean, there's only so much mining we can do, right?
Yeah.
So, I guess with the global world, Australia's well positioned in many ways.
Yeah. For an overseas, potentially ESIC company, would you consider the conversion rates of that currency? For example, 1 million Australian dollars, 50 million Indian rupees. It's too much of money there. I mean, I don't
Australian dollars.
So I have to stick to. I have to qualify 1 million Australian dollars for sure.
So a sophisticated investor doesn't need to invest $1 million.
But for
for the expenses on the early stage test. Okay, so the question is, can an overseas company have a conversion of
Australian dollars is 50 million Indian rupees?
Yep. Okay, so it would need to be converted back to Australian dollars to work out some sort of equivalent.
Yeah. So I had to generate revenue of 1 million Australian dollars in a year to get qualified.
No, you need income of less than $200,000 Australian.
Okay.
Income of less than 200,000. Zero's okay, a loss.
Okay.
And expenses of less than $1 million Australian in the previous year.
Okay.
Yep. So income of less than 200 grand.
Okay, I think we'll close there because you guys, when is your flight now? The other one got cancelled.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Thank you everyone for attending.
Yeah,
and
thanks.
We've got brochures there, and feel free to drop us an email or engage if the stuff here is of interest to you.
Yeah, take the business cards and the brochures and ask any questions. And we've got 93 total viewers online, so more than here. So thanks, Stephen and Fraser. Yeah,
thank you very much.
So
thanks for your
very interesting. Thank you. Thanks guys for watching, and I will put this on our YouTube channel as well as the meetup page. If you follow me on Periscope, you'll get the Twitter handle, my Twitter handle, and you can follow me with the link to the meetup, and everything is there. On the meetup, you get the link to the YouTube channel for Silicon Beach TV. And happy investing or happy ESIC startup. See you later. Thanks. Bye for now.